what is the thing you can tell the viewers about anxiety, depression, and mindset that would show them why they should care about this topic more and why they should talk about it more?
Well, good question. I think it's just much more common than we think. Probably now more than ever, maybe becoming even more relevant in the next few years, probably. And I think it's most of the time you can't really see it. So I think talking about it, especially for me, I noticed the more I talk about it, the more people actually opened up to me as well, telling me they have a similar history. So yeah, I think showing that you also maybe struggle opens up a lot of the conversation for other people as well.
I agree, especially like when we can notice that much like more people, even from your post, that are liking it and opening up to it, even not maybe like just ready to talk about it, but kind of being aware of it, which is the first step. But I noticed, I read some articles about depression and all of that stuff, that 5% of population can just has it or will have it in some point of in their life, which is crazy to me. That almost in any big room you are in, everywhere there is probably some people or person that have depression.
Yeah.
And why do you think now more than ever it is like more common that people have depression?
I think there's a lot of reasons. First and foremost, I think we just never really learned how to really cope with emotions, or we're getting worse at it at least. That's one point, and the other point is probably we are more connected than ever in terms of social media, mobile phones, whatever. But it's more superficial connections, not so much deeper connections. And I think in the past people were struggling more, but that also made them stick together more. And I think that's what missing a little bit in terms of the community and like having deep connections and not just, hey, this is a friend of mine, that's his name, and that's pretty much all I know about him.
Yeah, but you said like people in even maybe the previous generations, of course, had this problem, but it kind of seems like, especially like Gen Z or our generation, has the most problem with it. Like, of course, it's probably because of social media, but there may be some people that are saying, "Oh, we hadn't had depression or this all of these mental illnesses like you have," and like people like that have depression or in our generations are weak. That's because of it, and kind of wanted to know like your opinion on it, and why do you think they are like talking about kind of stuff like this and all of that?
Yeah. I mean, life is getting faster and faster with all the technology. There's probably more and more uncertainty. And combining that with probably comparing yourself to others on social media, you feel like you're lacking, you're always behind. Then there's this 19-year-old being a multimillionaire, whatever. I think that's one part. Um, that definitely contributes to it. Comparing yourself and then just the uncertainty and everything getting faster, so you don't have that much time to adapt. And probably a bit more controversial take is that a lot of people, like, there will be periods in your life where you're just going to be sad. I mean, maybe someone died, maybe something happened in terms of you lost your job or whatever. Those are times you will probably feel sad and not the best way. And I think nowadays we are just quicker to label everyone being depressed when this is actually just life. And this can be, or this is totally normal to feel, to have a bad day, maybe even have a bad week or a bad month if something severe happens. And I think that's a combination that that makes us probably even more sick, because then we have this downtime of feeling not so good, and then we compare to others, maybe do some bad decisions, And I think that keeps people stuck quite often.
Yeah, and especially with the comparing yourself is much more common than ever. I wanted to know, like, do you have some strategies that would help you with, uh, like, not comparing yourself to other people? Because eventually everybody, like, did it or is going to do it, because it's kind of like in us that comparing yourself to this, to that, to all of the people, and maybe some strategies on how to help, or even when you're in that comparing yourself to other state, how to get out of it, and how what is the kind of mindset you can acquire to like improve at it and don't compare. Like the only person I heard that you should compare yourself to is your yesterday self or your past self, so you can improve. And yeah, I wanted to know your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the biggest thing you can do, to not compare yourself to others, but to what you've done, to what you've achieved. That's definitely the main point. One thing that has helped me is deleting my Instagram, actually, because that's the platform I use to compare myself to others. So I think even just doing it for a period of time, maybe you're just doing it for a month or maybe 2 or a quarter, whatever, I think that can help. And then just focusing on yourself. Plus, I think the more time or the more effort you spend on achieving things that actually aren't yourself, you're gonna feel miserable. And the more you look at actually successful people, the more you realize that they don't have it all figured out. So yes, there's a few hyper successful people who have a lot of money, success, whatever. But that doesn't mean that's the right way for you. That's point A. Point B, that doesn't mean they're necessarily happy. And I think if you look at that, you have to focus on yourself. What makes you actually happy? That's point one. And then doing what makes you happy. Finding out what makes you happy and doing it. That's the most basic thing you can do. But then focusing on yourself and maybe take a journaling approach, to actually write down what you have achieved, maybe goals you have made for the next year, and then just going at them, and just focusing on that.
Yeah, but one thing that comes to mind, especially when people say, you should delete your social media and all of that stuff, it is like for maybe some creators, it is literally, their job be on social media, engage with people and doing all of that stuff. But of course, doing even some outreach, even for me, I'm always outreaching on every platform for this podcast. And it would be kind of limiting or hard to just delete my Instagram for some periods of time. And of course, I get it. And, maybe approach that I'm trying or helped me was being kind of very intentional with what I'm watching and what I'm doing on that platform. That helped me because, of course, you sometimes get into those rabbit holes of scrolling and not really doing anything, but awareness, especially in these platforms, for me kind of helps. So,
Yeah. I mean, if you can control yourself in the terms that you maybe limit your time on social media, or that you're very intentional on not consuming but creating or using it for a purpose of reaching out to people, getting information, whatever, then it can still be very useful. But I think that takes a lot of training, and a big part is definitely discipline to stick to that and not just fall into the habit of scrolling on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, in your bed and just staying awake instead of maybe sleeping or doing something that you should actually be doing. So I think taking a step back and maybe taking an intentional break before that, of just a few days completely off, can help you to stick with being intentional then after it.
yeah, it does. Sometimes you need those breaks even when you're doing all of that stuff. And I wanted to get into, especially like your journey and your story with those depression, anxiety, and how did you like mindset wise, how did you improve and got better and got out of from it. So, what's your story?
My story started pretty much 10 years ago, pretty much exactly 10 years ago, working at the job where I've had bosses that were not the nicest, to put it that way, insulting and putting you down and all of that stuff. And that over time takes a toll on you. You really start to doubt yourself. And if you get to hear you're stupid, at some point you're gonna actually question yourself if you are. And in my case, step one was to get out of that environment. And I think if that's the case for anyone in terms of your environment is making you sick or question yourself or whatever, I think changing your environment is step one. And then part two, if you're actually feeling unwell, if you're actually down, I think shaming yourself for feeling that way is the absolute worst way you can go about it. And I think it really starts with compassion to yourself, to actually allow yourself to feel it, to not shame yourself about it, to feel sad, to feel down or whatever you're feeling, accepting that it is that way, but also knowing that you can do something about it and this isn't permanent. And I think those three, compassion, acceptance, and then knowing that you do actually can do something about it, those are probably the top three advices I can give for anyone. And then just make yourself a priority, basically. If it's the environment that's making you feel unwell, it's making a clear cut. If it's certain people, you have to cut them out at least for some time. And then if they get back into your life, basically have to train them, as funny as that sounds. But then setting healthy boundaries is very important. That goes for other people, but also for yourself, in terms of boundaries for yourself, that you don't necessarily indulge in any bad behavior or let yourself fall down too much, but actually knowing, like, compassion can also be, I know I don't feel good, but I know doing this won't make me feel better. It may be for a few minutes, but it doesn't have you feel better in the next 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 years, whatever. And I think those are really, really big parts in getting better, to actually prioritize yourself and then making a consistent effort to actually do something about it.
And I wanted to get more deep into that deep point. Changing your environment, I even see like how important and essential it can be and how life-changing it can be, especially when you have a bad environment around you. But there can be this thing that, again, not always you are kind of in control of your environment and you can just leave the city or do anything basically about it. And do you have some advice for those people? Or
Then it's boundaries. If you can't necessarily change in terms of moving out of a bad job or a city or whatever, then it is really limiting the amount of time you spend with certain people or whatever, and just making really clear boundaries in terms of, this is how you have to treat me if we are going to interact. And if that's not the case, then we're just not going to interact, or at least not any single minute more than we actually have to. And then it's just basically showing people how you want to be treated, and to treat yourself that same way, in terms of how you want to be treated, because it really starts in your mind. If that environment is taking a toll on you, you will start talking negatively to yourself, and then you start setting boundaries, and then you're overthinking it in terms of, can I really do that, and is this really the right way? But those are the times you have to tell yourself, yes, this is the right way.
honestly, it kind of sounds a little bit scary, setting those boundaries for yourself. And even when you said, even for those bosses you had in those jobs, sometimes it can feel really scary that saying them that we are going to interact in this way. And do you have any maybe another tips or ways how you can kind of take the courage to tell somebody that, yes, this is how we are going to interact and this is how we are going to go, or there will be no other way?
You just have to do it. There's no way in terms of prepping or going around this. You just have to do it. As stupid as it sounds, but it is the way. You have to do it. Maybe make a list in terms of those are my values, those are their values, and it's not matching. And because of that, I don't like their behavior or their rules or whatever. But at the end of the day, you just have to say it. That's just it.
Yeah, even I heard some quote from on the podcast that, what's the best cure for fear? And they said go. So I think that implements in here too.
Yeah. Basically, don't give yourself too much time to overthink it. You don't have to be completely out of pocket and be like, hey, I'm just banning you out of my life or whatever. But start with a simple no, in terms of maybe you get some work on your desk that you don't have time for, and then it's just a simple no, I can't. And then you basically just have to force yourself to not explain it. Just say no, I don't have time, and that's it. It will feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but it won't feel uncomfortable a few weeks, a few days in, whatever. It will just feel normal. It's not that it's bad or that it's scary. It's just unfamiliar for yourself, and that's the scary part of not knowing what will happen. But if you've done it a few times, you will realize, hey, this isn't actually as bad as I thought it is.
I like the kind of, it's not scary or bad or something, but it's unfamiliar. I like this kind of mindset on when you're doing new things, not even just kind of getting the courage, but even if with the other things. So yeah. And how did you know that you're in those bad states and you're not just overreacting, that yes, actually I have a lot of anxiety and I should do something about it, I have maybe depression or anything else, and you weren't just oh, I'm just being too soft, I should kind of tough up and just go?
If it's just in the situation you feel uncomfortable, or if it's just
no,
in the
if in
situation you feel
general,
bad,
how did you know that this is probably not good?
yeah, if you're in the situation, if you feel bad, that's totally normal. But if it's having an effect on the rest of your life, that I think it is probably a very clear sign of there's something wrong. If you are in a situation that is maybe scary or that is uncomfortable because you've never done it, then it is just totally normal. But if it's over a long period of time and you don't actually have times in between where you calm down, where you can actually relax, but maybe in the times between those events it's maybe even worse, then I think it's time to really take a step back and have a hard look at your life or the environment you're in, and make some changes. That's what it was for me. Of course, if you don't like your boss and then you are at work, you're probably not going to feel very great. But if then everything else in your life starts to deteriorate, you don't like doing the things you used to love, then it's really a good sign that something is wrong.
And what was that job that you did that didn't have those very good bosses and all of those people?
It was part of my dual studies program, so I was working in a gym, and then studying part-time as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you said gym, and did exercising and moving your body help you it helped you mentally?
It always did. For me, it's tough to say because I was always working out, so I can't tell you how I would feel without working out. I don't have the capacity to tell you, hey, this is what I felt before I was working out. This is how I felt after, because I've always been working out. But I've never felt worse after working out. So for me, I think especially if you're sad or if you're anxious all the time, there's a lot of adrenaline in you. Like you're sitting at your desk and your leg is constantly shaking or you're tapping on things or whatever, and that energy you just have to let out somehow. And for me, the gym is just probably one of the best and most productive ways to do it, to actually get the energy out and to calm down afterwards. So for me, I always can only tell everyone to go to the gym, because for me it's been massively helpful in many ways. So I think it's a big part of challenging yourself, but also to calming yourself down and using your energy that would be spent maybe on doing not so good decisions or worrying, put it into a workout and actually use it for something productive.
Yeah, for sure, I agree. When especially it helps me too when I have too much energy or after even a hard day when I think I don't have basically any energy left. When I go to the gym or I just do any kind of movement in general, there is always something that kind of brings me back the energy I had or makes me more alive. It either gives me energy or kind of takes away the energy I don't need. So I think it works in both ways for me. And for example, I'm sure you had some people around you that maybe even notice that you're not quite happy or anything or like things like that. And I wanted to ask if like how should people kind of what should they do when they see like their friend or somebody they know may have some of these mental illnesses. They're sad, they are constantly like I don't want to do this or that, or they have anxiety, anything like that. And like what should they do or what is the right thing to do?
I think one of the best ways to do it, and I recently saw videos of Simon Sinek who basically said the same thing, is to open up yourself. So if you feel or if maybe have some thoughts that a friend of yours is struggling, maybe he is showing some signs, actually ask them how they are doing and maybe tell them like, hey, how are you doing? Because I've been struggling. That was his words. Or you can tell like, hey, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. You don't seem like you've been yourself. And if I felt that way, it was always been a sign for me to be down. Because if you struggle in any shape or form mentally, the last thing you want is to be a burden on others. So you don't want to be the one who's dragging other people down. You necessarily don't want to share it because it can be tough on people, and you never know if people really want to talk about it or if they are capable of talking about it or whatever. And I think if you ask a friend how they are feeling, and at the same time share that maybe you have had bad times as well, or maybe you are struggling at the moment as well, I think that's just making it so much easier on the other one to actually open up themselves and tell them like, hey, yeah, you're right, I actually am struggling, to actually make people feel like they are not a burden, like, hey, this is totally normal. I felt that way. I've known 10 people who felt that way. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I love that advice, honestly. Like open up yourself. And yeah, I kind of didn't expect that, but it makes so much sense now than I think about it. And like, did you have some people that were like um, open up to you or that were asking you like even this question like if you're okay, or did you had not and you wish you had those people
I
with
didn't
you?
have people around who were approaching it that way because I was always very good at hiding it, so people didn't necessarily know. One person who did notice was my girlfriend at the time, obviously, because when you spend a lot of time together and you drastically change over the course of maybe a few months, people will notice. Plus, for me, it was so bad. Like there wasn't hiding anymore. If you started crying out of the blue, it's tough to hide that. So yeah, the signs for me were very obvious, but most of the people at that time uh, didn't know, had no clue. Even a lot of friends that they never knew. So yeah, that I think it takes. There's only a few people I think who really notice you being off, or at least they notice being off and actually asking you about it. Some people might think, hey, maybe he's not feeling well, but I wouldn't say they don't want to know, but maybe they haven't thought about actually asking, like, is there anything deeper, maybe? But yeah, so I think it's very hard to spot at times how people are actually feeling.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree that many people are good at hiding it, and there are some people that even if you want to help or you kind of want to engage with it, that you don't even notice them. I think that's most of people actually.
Yeah.
And I wanted to even get into that kind of topic of emotions and how to handle them and kind of feel them, because as you said, it is a big kind of big thing, and of course this like depression, anxiety, and all of that stuff of feeling just your emotions. And then even when you may not have even depression or this mental illnesses, you just may feel sad, and that sucks, and many people don't know how to process it kind of in the right way or how to deal with it. And like, how do you think about emotions and processing them?
Feeling it is probably the best way to go about it. If you have to feel them at some point. Like if you drown yourself in whatever distraction you like using, it's just going to add up. So like feeling it, actually allowing yourself to feel it, maybe block some time out on the weekend where you just don't do anything. So you can actually give yourself the time to feel it. But if you block it out, if you suppress it, it's just gonna get worse. So there will be it will stack up basically. And if you don't allow yourself to feel it, if you either just push it down or you just avoid feeling it or whatever you do, it's just not going to make it any better. Maybe in the moment, but in the long run, definitely not. So talking about it, feeling it, and actually allowing yourself to feel it, and not in the terms of like, I feel bad, I feel weak, I shouldn't be feeling this, whatever. It's just emotions. They are, in the end, they are not there to hurt us. They're just signals to something going on in your life, and I think that's the way you have to look at it. Emotions are signals to you having to process something in most of the times, and that's feeling it. You just it's an emotional problem, and that needs an emotional solution, and feeling is going through that.
I love the idea of emotional problem and they need an emotional solution. And one of the problems that many people may have is that they are so distracted in those, distractions, their phone, social media, that they don't even know how to feel their emotions or if they are doing it right. And one of those things, I've heard works is talking about it, but not, but it can become quite of a rumination if you do it, so much, just talk about it. And that can again be just another kind of distracting mechanism. I think it's one step of it, but it's not all of it. And one of other things it may be that they is having the time of actually I'm going to like just do nothing and stare at a blank wall maybe even as you said, journaling about those emotions, I think can help. And yeah, basically all of that, which is like in emotions. And
Yeah, I mean, talking about it can be quite scary as well, because you are making yourself vulnerable to the person you're talking to. And yeah, like you mentioned, journaling, it is basically like talking to yourself, or at least talking it out, and then just having it out of your head. So journaling is actually one thing that helped me quite a lot. Maybe just at the end of the day, whatever was going on in your head that day, in terms of any specific situations you were thinking about constantly, any negative feedback loops you had during the day, just write them down, because most of the time that was actually what helped me just quiet my mind, in terms of just letting it out, having processed it, with that kind of journaling, and then just having clearer, more calm mind. And if I want to revisit it, I can always do, because I've written it down, so I can go over it again. But just letting it out, in terms of talking or journaling, definitely can help. And journaling is one of those practices that has helped me quite a bit in the past.
same for me. And especially journaling, it's kind of when you're looking back at it, mm, it's like time traveling. Like this was my mind state then, and I think it's kind of so cool. And even in journaling, you talk about it in your guides. You know those 3 exercises
Yeah.
that can help you with anxiety. And you had some prompts there, so you if you want to, you can share some with the viewer, and what helped you and on what purposes those prompts may be, and why do you think they helped you?
Well, for me, the three parts I talk about in the free ebook is one, journaling, then it's meditation and cold exposure. All of those things are for slightly different purposes. The journaling is basically, you will be thinking a lot if you're suffering. You will be thinking about everything and everything going wrong, and most of your thoughts will be quite unreasonable in terms of things or scenarios that can happen, but the likelihood of it happening is slim to none. And getting it out of your head, writing it down, is a good way to actually get it out and then just be done with it. And the next part, with the cold showers and the meditation, is actually the part where I got into Wim Hof, because that's the practices he teaches basically. And for me, the cold exposure helped me with, if you feel anxious, the symptoms you basically have are the same if you take a cold shower or cold bath, and anxiety is very similar. Your heart rate increases, your breathing is faster and heavier, and then just basically having a way to learn how to cope with it, or to get back into control when your breathing increases and your heart rate goes up. That's just a good way to practice it, because in the shower it will be still uncomfortable, but you are in an environment where you feel safe. Like if you stop the shower, it's over. So you're very much in control of it, and then learning that to keep your breath in control, basically. That's a good exercise. That's what helped me a lot. And then meditation is the focus, because the Wim Hof breathing is very much focused on a strong inhale, and then just focusing on that inhale. So you start with your belly, your chest, and then all the way to your head. And when anxiety hits, it's very hard to stay focused on whatever you're actually doing. So your mind drifts. And that has helped me, or the meditation has helped me with being able to focus my mind more and staying more in control of what I focus on. And on the other hand, when you do the Wim Hof breathing, there's a lot of bodily sensations you have. Like for me, it's always my fingertips who start like itching a little bit. You feel a bit like you're vibrating in your chest a little bit, and those again are sensations you feel when you're anxious or when you're having a panic attack. So you learn to actually, in that moment, feel that without having the need to escape it or having to numb it or whatever. And those are the things that actually helped me a lot in the past few years, and things I still do pretty much on the daily. Like there's very few showers I don't end cold. I still journal every week. I still meditate every evening. And the meditation also helped me a lot with my sleep as well.
To get into more of that, the Wim Hof stuff with cold showers and with all of that, because even I kind of started doing cold showers after I found out about like his methods. I bought his book, and you said you were on his kind of just meet up, or it was
Mhm.
something like that. And I wanted to hear that story. How was the atmosphere, and what did it teach you about breathing, emotion, even the sense of community that was there, and kind of with you doing all of those exercises and breathing focusly.
Yeah, so it was quite a big event in Cologne in Germany, in a very, very big arena. I'm not quite sure how many people were there. I think it's been like 2.5, 3,000 people maybe on that day. And obviously the whole Wim Hof method, the breathing and the cold exposure, it doesn't take very long. It's maybe 15, 20 minutes if you do it. But the whole day was structured around the whole biological part about it in terms of the dopamine you release and all of that. Then the studies he's done with getting infected with the E. coli bacteria and then basically breathing himself to heal. So there's been a lot of scientific stuff on that day, but there's also been quite a lot of singing actually. So he had I don't know if they were his friends, I believe so, singing and playing the guitar, and then also doing the Wim Hof breath work together. I think we did 4 rounds maybe of doing it, and it has been quite the experience, because if you do it alone, you will feel some sensations like the tingling in your fingers and all of that. But if you do it with like 3,000 people, it's on a completely different level. At least it was for me. Because if everyone's doing it, the atmosphere is very, very different from you doing it alone at home. And you're just in a place where everyone around you feels like they are vibrating. It's If you've never done it, it's maybe hard to comprehend. But in that day, or in that case, you really were vibrating. So it was quite the experience, and everyone, like, you didn't know the people around you, but everyone was just so friendly to each other. And I think at some point we just hugged the people around us, which was quite nice. And then just like realizing like, hey, everybody's here to learn, to share the same experience. Everyone here is just very friendly and nice. And then the ice bath was like swimming pools all over the arena, or all around the arena basically. And I think it was always 8 or 10 people in one pool going together, doing the ice bath. It was just a fun experience, to be honest. If you have the chance, I can highly recommend it. Luckily, the day was quite sunny, so after the ice bath, you could just lay in the sun basically, because that was the end of the day. I think after that there was just some Q&A for any people who still had some questions. But yeah, it was a great experience, and if there's the possibility of doing it again, I will 100% do it.
It's really sweet. And about that first part you were talking about those kind of biological stuff around this breathing. What is the like one big takeaway or even more takeaways you took from it and interesting stuff that kind of made it like, oh, like this works that way, or this wow moments that wow how this is possible or something.
It wasn't so much in the way that I understood I understood how things work, because I still think there's some mystery around it of why it actually works. But it just goes to show that you can actually control much more about your body or what happens in your body than you think. So that was probably the biggest realization.
Really sweet. And when you were like in the cold plunges, was it kind of just like this focused energy? Everybody was quiet, and it was very kind of this quiet, or were you just talking and it was this kind of free energy that you were just friends hanging out in the pool?
I wouldn't necessarily say people were talking, because everyone was quite focused on staying calm and on their breathing in the cold plunge. Um, if you heard something, maybe it was more like swearing how cold it was. Um, so there wasn't much talking going on in the ice bath itself, but before it and after it, obviously quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense actually. And you now wanted to get more. And how did you even get into meditation and Wim Hof cold showers? It was just through, Instagram and self-improvement people telling that how like life-changing it is, or how did you get into it?
It was quite a coincidence. I can't tell you exactly how or when the first time was I actually got in touch with the whole Wim Hof method. Um, I just somehow stumbled on it on YouTube, found it very interesting, tried it a few times, on and off, and then I started implementing it more and more, especially the cold showers, and then that's how I basically got stuck on it.
There was this post that you made that leave before it gets worse. You don't have to obey. Try to stay for 5 minutes longer than you want to. That's how the courage is
Yeah,
trained.
that's basically how I still believe very much in exposing yourself if you feel anxious about whatever. I don't know, maybe it's heights or maybe it's flying or whatever it is. I still think you have to go through it in terms of making yourself not worry about it. And for me, a lot of social situations were very, very hard in the past. And if you were in that situation, I noticed that if I just was in that situation and then I started to feel uncomfortable, I left. And then when I was home, I always thought to myself, like, was it actually that bad? Like, couldn't I have stayed a bit longer? I started staying longer, and instead of focusing on, okay, we have this family event or this social event from work or whatever it is, if you focus on the whole event, like, okay, we are here and now it's going to take an hour until food is ready and then we're going to eat and then maybe dessert and then talking, it's very overwhelming, thinking about the whole event, and then just maybe thinking about the next 5 minutes, and focusing on that, you're just going to realize how fast that time actually goes by, if you just commit yourself to maybe 5 more minutes, and then after those 5 minutes you're going to be like, okay, those 5 minutes were actually much easier than I thought. I'm going to say another 5 minutes, and then after those additional 5 minutes it's going to be the same. You're probably going to say, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought, and then it's just gonna it's kind of that ripple effect of like 5 minutes, another five, and then it's 10, and then another 10. Um, that's just a good way to not feel overwhelmed by the whole situation. You still have a way out, because if you say like, okay, I'm gonna stay another 5 minutes, and if I don't feel good in 5 minutes, I can still leave. So you're just not pressuring yourself into staying like the whole evening. And so this approach helped me to like ease the pressure and to actually learn that it's not as bad as you actually think.
It reminds me of kind of one more mentality that you do one more rep, you do one more minute or something like that, and kind of you go almost to the end when you
Yeah.
realize it that you're much stronger than you think. And it was that, especially in the beginning, you said that not everything is supposed to feel comfortable, even if it's good for you, or you think you're supposed to like it because it's so much like it's so good for you, you're improving, everything is great, so why I don't feel great? And especially, I had this kind of block in my mind that yes, even when it's good for you, even when it's kind of supposed to be, even when you're improving and all of that stuff, that yeah, it doesn't really need to be like, it doesn't need to feel nice all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's just a good full circle moment in terms of what we talked about in the beginning, that most things aren't necessarily uncomfortable, they are just unfamiliar. And that's basically the essence of it. That let's say you just got let go at your job, and maybe you feel terrible in that moment, but the next job you're gonna have, maybe you're gonna be feeling much better. Maybe it's a much better fit for you. Maybe you learn much more than before. Maybe you get to connect with better people, whatever it is. So for me, there's actually a lot of things that aren't necessarily uncomfortable. They are just unfamiliar in terms of I don't know what's coming. Because if, especially with depression and anxiety, you always want to stay in control and you always want to know what happens in the future. Like you want to know that in 5 minutes X is going to happen, or that in 5 minutes you will be done, and whatever it is. And if you are not in control, it's going to be unfamiliar. And that's just basically the essence of it, that it's not uncomfortable. You just don't know what's happening, but not knowing what's happening isn't actually that bad. It's just unfamiliar. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed on that. And what another post you had about like anxiety, anxiety makes you treat every potential mistake like a catastrophe. So, so you avoid, overthink, you don't start. Meanwhile, someone less prepared just went for it and learning more in one attempt than you did in months of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, if you are constantly anxious, your nervous system will be very on edge. It's like a scale, but the scale gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if the scale gets smaller and smaller, even the smaller weights you put on it will bring the scale to its max. And so that's basically your nervous system. And if it's constantly on edge, if you're constantly anxious, every little thing will be some spark of anxiety. Maybe it's just a door opening in the room next door. Maybe it's just, I don't know, something that fell down, in terms of a plate breaking or whatever. And that's just going to put you really on edge, because your level is already so high. And then getting it over the edge just takes a little thing. And yeah, that's basically or the first step is to calm down, because then you're just gonna be much more relaxed. And if then a mistake happens, the anxiety level won't be as high as if you are already in a heightened state, and you won't be overthinking too much in the first place.
Yeah, I agree on that. And especially, it kind of reminds me of even this mentality I had and many people have in social media, that you strategize so much, you plan everything out, trying to just have everything in control, but then somebody much less even smarter than you, or less skilled than you just does like 10 attempts in the, in the same time you were planning so much, and they are in much better place or much more successful than you were before, than you were just, planning this thing out. And it kind of reminds me of like it's better to do those 10, 20 imperfect, and sending messages or imperfect attempts, and you learn much more than just kind of crafting the one perfect just thing and going for it. And
Yeah.
it's in perfectionism kind of problem.
Yeah, but and I'm 100% guilty of that. Like I'm someone who really likes to plan things. If I could, I would like to plan every week ahead, like this is what I'm gonna do then, and that's gonna create X result and whatever. But the truth is you can't. Like no matter how good you are in planning things, there's just so much variations you can't control. And if you try to plan your way to become the biggest creator on X, or you plan to become the best, I don't know, race car driver, whatever it is, you can only plan so much because you have to do something and then you have to see how it plans out, because there's this whole other area of life that you can control. And then at the end of the day, you spend, I don't know, 3, 4 hours, maybe month, weeks in planning, and then you take the first step and then you realize, oh, the result is completely different from what I expected, and all the planning has been for nothing basically, because now you have to do another plan because the environment or the whole situation is completely different now. So I think do plan, but don't plan everything. Just plan like the next 1 or 2 steps, and then take those steps and then do it again. That's probably the much better way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% that. I have, my Notion page with all of the things I'm doing, kind of planning things out. But yes, especially in this day and age, planning things out like 10 steps ahead is like not really the best option, because everything is changing so fast. And
Yeah.
even before everything was changing fast too. And especially in business or in X or growing social media, nothing kind of works the way you imagined it, and that makes it hard, you know. So that's honestly for me too.
Yeah, you always think you know what's gonna happen, but 9 out of 10 times you don't. You think this is the best post I've ever written, and then it gets one view, and then you just write down some random things, and all of a sudden everyone loves it. So you just can't plan everything as much as you want to. So just focus on the next step, or the next 5 minutes, and then go from there.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, anxiety loves what if. Bring it to what is. Right now, I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm safe.
Yeah, it's just the catastrophic thinking of anxiety, because it's just the need for control again. So the thing is, you don't have control over what happens next, at least to a certain degree. So you always think about, okay, what if this happens? Okay, and if this happens, I'm going to do that, and if that happens, I'm going to do this. But in this moment, you just don't know what's happening. So in this moment, you just have to focus on accepting that it's just the way it is. That's point one. Point two is accepting that this isn't as bad as you probably think it is. It's not like the anxiety is not here to hurt you. It's uncomfortable. Yes, it feels like shit. I know, but just focusing on what you can control in that moment. That's just key to overcoming it. Because if you just start planning, it feels like you're being productive, but you're actually just fueling the fire, in terms of you just find more things that can go wrong the more you think about it, instead of things that can go right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially when I now think about it with anxiety, I think it is either just this is going to hell if everything is so bad, and just you think of every worst possible scenario that's going to happen, or either is it kind of you get into this like problem solving and not problem like overthinking mode, and you literally think of every scenario that is going to happen, that is possible to happen. And most of the time when overthinking, you kind of miss the what if it works out scenario and what if it's all good scenario. And maybe some your thoughts or some advice on overthinking. And you said even before that focusing on that next step is really important. So
Yeah, and it's just back to taking action. If you, let's just say there's, I don't know, a presentation you have to take and that is really stressing you out, the more you push it in the future, the more time you will actually have to worry about it, to suffer about it, all of it. So I just think taking action and proving to yourself that nothing bad is happening is the right step. So if you constantly avoid on taking the presentation, you're just going to give yourself more time to actually suffer instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow, and then at least then tomorrow it will be over. So instead of pushing it forward, do something. If you are maybe just having an anxiety attack at home or whatever, do something. Anything usually helps, even if it's just going for a walk outside. But just doing anything is usually the first step to feeling better.
yeah. One more point is that kind of I found it interesting is that the people you admire the most didn't have easier lives than you. They had harder ones, and they stopped waiting for the hard to end before they started building.
Yeah, it's something that I even noticed more and more the past couple of weeks, because my former mentor started a company which I'm now working in or for him, and obviously now I'm much closer to him than I was even before. So I already see much more of his private life as well, and like there's if you only know him from work, you only know so much about him. Like you always see that happy-go-lucky guy being successful, whatever. But there's just so much more going on in the background, so much stuff that should be things where you feel like, hey, how can you still do this at work if this is going on at home or in your free time or whatever it is? And that's just the thing you realize. Like the higher the highs, the higher the lows usually are as well. That's just how it is. And the more time you spend with people who are very successful, the more you're gonna see that.
Yeah. Especially when I started doing this podcast, I started to see that, yeah, those people who have so much stuff, like actually worked hard and have hard lives, and essentially they are just normal people that most of society just puts on a pedestal, and they are, and says they are so lucky, which like sometimes like of course may not like of course especially is about how you think about getting lucky, but they worked really hard for this, and most of the time they deserve it. Of course there are some people that actually got successful overnight, and they maybe don't kind of deserve their success, but who are we to say that? And when I'm like talking to them more and more, oh, it kind of sometimes makes you question like what do you really want, because of course everybody on social media is presenting this shiny lifestyle, but it's actually not that easy as many people make it look. And it makes you
Yeah.
question your what do you really want, and kind of values. And do you just really want it for, the love of the thing and that you really want it, or everybody just said you should want this and look at how perfect this lifestyle is?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good way to put this in terms of like the bigger your life or the bigger your money, your bank account, whatever, the bigger the problems are going to be as well, because a lot more money is at stake. And I think a good way to look at it is, let's just say you have an investment portfolio of 100,000. If the market drops 10%, that number is going to be significantly smaller than if you have 100 million and the market drops 10%. It's still 10%, but it's maybe 10,000 against 10 million drop. So it's the drop is still percentage wise the same, but it looks much, 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 much bigger. And that's just how life is going to be. If you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of success, you can also lose a lot more in terms of money, success, status, whatever. That's just part of it. So the more you have, the more you can lose as well. And that's what most people forget. And especially if you have a lot of money, there will be more people going after you in terms of wanting your money, your status, or whatever. So yeah, I think being as rich as, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, whoever it is, there's some significant downsides to it. And people often just want the money, but don't necessarily what comes with it. One good quote I heard working in recruiting is, do you want the job or do you want the title? And a lot of people want to be CEO, but if you actually know that all the responsibility you have or the drama you have or the stress you have, most people don't want that. They just want the shiny title and the money, but they don't want anything that comes with it. And that's what many, many people forget.
Yes, and it comes to the essential of, everybody wants the trophy, but nobody wants the training ground. It kind of goes to that you people don't kind of want to work through that stuff, but then it kind of reminds me of idea of kind of the journey is the reward, and I'm trying to remind myself that, because when you're just going after this goal, that this how many followers, this is how many likes I want to get, you kind of forget about, the process and why, and all of that other things, that maybe that when you will be at the top and when you get the thing, you kind of realize that, getting the thing was fun, having the thing is not so much fun right now.
Yeah, no matter where you are in life in terms of, is it sports you're going to be very successful at, is it business, is it music, is it art, whatever, the things you learn along the way are probably much more valuable. Like if you just take all the money from Elon Musk now, it's probably not going to take much time until he will have another successful business as well. Because it's just the skill set he learned along the way in terms of how to deal with setbacks and how to deal with failure and all of it. And that's probably the thing that separates you the most, if you're at that point, and not necessarily the money. But yeah, like you said, many people want the trophy and not to actually work for it.
Yeah. Other thing I wanted to touch on, like, how did you even, after, this period of, anxiety and all of those other things, that how did you get into actually writing about it and sharing it with people?
Well, as we talked about, I was journaling for the last, I don't know how many years already. And for me, one of my biggest fears was always people knowing of me struggling in terms of what are they going to think if they know and whatever. And for me, then it was basic math in terms of like, this is what I'm scared of. So this is what I'm actually going to do. It was just facing fears in essence, basically, like showing my vulnerability and showing that I struggle. And then I just noticed how much, not just I gain from it, but how much I can share and how much mistakes I have made in the past, and how much people can hopefully learn from that as well.
Yeah. And other thing that you mentioned, you had a mentor. Was it a mentor you found like through the internet and through the X, or was it just somebody you know or got recommended?
No, it was actually through work. So my first job after my bachelor's degree, it was just my mentor for work actually. But obviously, if you work very closely together, um, there will be some kind of friendship coming from it, and then just staying in touch basically. And this evolved into not just him being a mentor for me at work back then, but for many, many things in life outside of work as well, and now at work again.
Yeah, makes sense. That's pretty sweet. And how do you think having a mentor helped you with, all of the stuff around like life? And because I heard so much that having a mentor is so great, and with all of that stuff, even in self-improvement, with all the advices that even from videos I watch, is like having a mentor, like when you have the opportunity you should get it. And I wanted to like know your perspective on it, and from somebody who like actively has a mentor.
Yeah, it's been highly beneficial. Obviously, in terms of work is one thing, but like I mentioned, I work with him again now, and not just learning from him in a professional way, but also in a private way in the terms of how he deals with setbacks, or that he actually has setbacks was very big. Because if you think about it, if you look at your mentor and you just get to know him, it's like this big person in terms of he knows everything and he knows what to do and everything. But then if you realize that this person also struggles with certain things, whatever it is, maybe it's even the same things you struggle with, it just puts yourself at ease more, knowing like, hey, like this isn't just me. He's struggling as well, or she's struggling as well, whatever, whoever your mentor is. So yeah, I think realizing this and seeing like, hey, it's not like I'm struggling because I'm not good enough, but it's because everyone is struggling at some point in life. There was a big realization, and then obviously just having someone you can ask for questions, and who's going to be by your side no matter what, is very, very good. But at the same time, I think he knows the same for me as well. So it's just a mutual benefit for both of us, because going through things in life, whether it is private or work related, and then going through the ups and downs, you will get very, very close to each other, and there will be a a lot of loyalty and like friendship and like helping each other out. And I think just knowing that and just having that person is very, very beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like having a best friend. It reminds me of it, at least, that you actually helped each other, and all of that other stuff around it. And one of my other questions, more general sense, was if all of your kind of stuff you've written on the internet, all of your content you've made, got erased from the internet, what is the one thing you want to people to remember, from your content? If you had, just one more post that you could post, and that would be it, like what would you write on it?
Probably it's not as bad as you think would be it if I have to put it in a short post, because that's my biggest takeaway in the terms of how much I worried about things, about what can happen, what will happen, no matter how unlikely the scenario actually is. At the end of the day, it was always easier looking back than I thought it would be. So yeah, that's probably, yeah, it's not as bad as you think, probably.
Yeah, that's a good line to add there. It's not as bad as you think. and it kind of applies to everything, especially with you know the content mindset, and it goes to this stuff I always try to like have in mind. It's kind of like the stoic mindset that always have like death before your eyes, and that probably this thing you're so worrying about and it's so bad for you right now is not actually that big, or it will not be that big of a deal. Or even if it goes to like health, you have like 100 problems until you have one health problem, then you have only one problem, that is the health
Yeah.
problem. And it's kind of, yeah, it would, especially it would remind me of that, yeah, kind of like breathe in, breathe out, and kind of enjoy the space, because as we talk about, we are so rushing into all of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter if it's losing your job or maybe losing some money or whatever it is, um, you always think about how maybe other people will feel about you if that happens, or how you will feel about yourself if that happens. And once you're actually in that situation, 99% of the times it's just realizing that, hey, I lost my job, but none of my friends are thinking different about me. Like they still like me. I'm still the same person. And that's just the biggest realization I think I had in terms of knowing how much suffering had happened, or in terms of me worrying about things, and then realizing, okay, even if the thing happened that I was worried about, nothing changed at the end of the day. My family still loves me. My friends still like me. Um, yeah, that's just. But I think oftentimes people can tell you about it all they want. Some things you just realize once you've been gone through it. And I think that's one of those things. Because if I tell someone half my age, like, hey, it's not as bad as you think, they're just gonna say yes, it will be, and then they go through it, and then after it's they're gonna be like, yeah, you were right. So yeah, you have to go through certain things to know it's not as bad.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can't, take the lesson without the scar. I think that would be a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we come to an end. I had a great conversation with you. I'm very thankful for sharing all of your advice on this stuff, and I'm grateful to have you here.
My pleasure. It was very fun. I like talking about it, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And of course, thanks to the viewers for watching. And I hope we can see each other sometime, maybe next time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.